Okay, so in front of you is one Goliath of a lithium iron phosphate battery, as you can probably tell. It weighs in over 100 pounds, 460 amp hours worth of capacity, 12.8 volt lithium iron phosphate battery. This thing is an absolute beast, and it's got a lot of differentiation between it and other batteries that are on the market in terms of how many batteries fit into a very compact area, which in many cases is going to be the limitation in terms of how many batteries you can actually install. The overall footprint of this is going to be significantly smaller than trying to cram 4 100 amp hour batteries, and even with 4 100 amp hour batteries, you're not going to have a total of 460 amp hours worth of power. We're going to talk about this, and this is going to be the new battery that lives in the front compartment of our Coachman Brookstone fifth wheel. Hang tight, I'll be right back. Okay, so batteries from Vatrer, they are definitely considered more of a value brand battery, which means you're going to get a lot for what you pay. In terms of this Goliath, this thing is going to be a relatively sizable investment if you're looking at batteries. However, if you're looking at getting as much power as possible in the smallest possible configuration, this might be something that you're interested in. First of all, from a quality perspective, it's a really well-built product. It's the only battery I've reviewed that has a full steel chassis to it. Yes, that is all steel all the way around. Even the end here, where you can turn it on or off, you can actually remove this and you can see the battery monitoring system in here, which is designed to protect the battery in terms of over voltage, low voltage, shutting off if the temperature gets too cold, all of that stuff. It basically maintains the battery to a degree to allow you not to have to worry as much about it if you're going to try to overcharge it, undercharge it, or if it's going to be exposed to extremely cold environments. That said, there's always best practices when it comes to maintaining the best performance out of a lithium iron phosphate battery, and that's usually to just keep it charged, and that is to discharge it when you can, but don't let it just naturally discharge on its own. A lot of folks automatically assume that because it's lithium that you can just set it and forget it and you never have to worry about it, but there are things that you can do to definitely make these batteries last longer. Just having them sit, not connected to anything, not receiving a charge, they will slowly lose their charge, and just having them sit, they're slowly going to lose capacity as well. They'll start not being able to hold that maximum charge. Sure, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a very, very long time for that to happen. But just to get the best performance out of a battery like this, regardless of the brand, you want to start using it. You want to keep it charged. You want to keep it maintained. And you definitely don't want it just to sit, to naturally discharge on its own. Otherwise, you could end up with dead cells, and that's not something you want. That said, there's a lot of YouTubers who have reviewed this product already. Most of them have said that this thing is an absolutely phenomenal value because of what it allows. It is app connected, so you can download the app and you can monitor all of the information about this, especially through the BMS, from the app itself. And quite frankly, like I said, the big value play here is that from a weight perspective, it's going to weigh less than 4 lithium iron phosphate batteries that have 100 amp hours. But again, in this case, you have 460 amp hours worth of capacity, which is going to be greater than replacing it with 4 batteries. Now, the value play versus like your traditional lead acid or deep cycle battery is the fact that on those batteries, you only get like 40, 50, 60% of capacity before the batteries start to fail. Basically, the voltage drops too low, and then at that point, they're even difficult to recharge and resuscitate. So you don't get a heck of a lot of value these days in deep cycle batteries over lithium iron phosphate, because these can be drained to zero. You can drain these down all the way, you can recharge them all the way, and you get pretty much 100% of the battery without the voltage dropping versus your traditional lead acid batteries, which, well, like I said, only give you between 40, 50, and 60% of capacity before voltage drops, and they're no longer going to be safe to use, or they'll no longer function well for whatever you're trying to use with the battery. So all of those are really good reasons to look at lithium iron phosphate. Most of the manufacturers you're seeing, even the lower cost ones, all generally have fairly universal BMS. They also are pretty dang reliable, to be honest. That said, very, very cool product. Really, really happy that that this finally came in. I've been waiting like 3 months for this thing to come in, and this is going to be one heck of a cool addition to the RV, because it's going to give me the ability to not have to have tons of batteries, because I can replace what's in there there, which weighs about 60 pounds currently, with something that's going to have over 4 times the capacity and weighs a little less than twice as much. That's pretty dang cool. Okay, so I've removed the 4 screws that hold the cover plate on. This cover plate's going to provide you a little bit of information right here. This is the model LM12460, which is 12 volt, 460 amp hours, I'm guessing. Gives you the dimensions, which is 18.78 inches by 10.5 by 9.92. Weight 104.7 pounds. So these are your cells back behind here. This is your BMS, which is mounted to the front of it. And again, this is going to monitor and maintain your battery just to protect it, as well as ensure things that you shouldn't be doing to it aren't happening to it, if that makes sense. I believe your temperature probe is probably going to be down here to shut off whenever it reaches too low of a temperature, basically have a disconnect in place. But again, this is still one of those things to where if it's lithium iron phosphate, it's unlikely to perform very well at or below 0 degrees, mainly because it's no longer going to accept a charge and you could actually kill the cells. So keeping this inside of an environment to where that's not going to happen is going to be important, as it's going to be important with almost all lithium iron phosphate batteries, unless they have a built-in heater, which is going to keep the chassis of it warm enough so that doesn't happen. So taking a dive into the specs, 460 amp hours is the equivalent to 5,888 watt hours worth of power. Output power on this is up to 3,200 watts, 5,000 plus life cycles, and the BMS is a 250 amp BMS. It does also have Bluetooth, so you are able to connect to this to see the information that is being read out from the battery itself in terms of performance. The reality behind this product is the MSRP on it is about $1,700, but in many cases you can get it on sale for much closer to $1,000, which is really nice. So definitely check out current sales and promos on these, as well as look at the reviews. People who have left comments on other YouTube channels who have reviewed this typically have very high praises of it and say that it performs exceptionally well, or they have multiple of these batteries and they do very, very well. So definitely understand that it's not just me saying this. This is other folks who have actually reviewed these as well as the folks who leave comments saying that they've purchased these batteries. So the continuous discharge and charge rate on it is 250 amps. It has a 600 amp peak high discharge current capability as well, and that would be for something, let's just say like a winch, to where it needs to draw a tremendous amount of power, a lot of current over a relatively short period of time. Anyways, we are going to get the cover put back on, get it installed inside of the RV, which we just recently installed a lithium compatible converter. So if you have any questions about that, that's what's currently in the RV. We're going to replace the charge controller, which was the charge controller that came with the RV, which is a PWM controller, with an MPPT Victron solar charge controller, which can support up to 30 amps worth of solar, and have this thing installed where the current lead acid deep cycle battery is, because quite frankly, we'll be not really reducing weight, we're going to be adding weight, but that battery weighs about 60 pounds, so this is going to be a little less than twice as heavy. But keep in mind, adding stuff like this does add a tremendous amount of weight to your RV. So just because you are upgrading things in your RV and maybe going to better tech does not mean that you're reducing the weight. Now, if I wanted to put 4 lead acid batteries in there, they would be significantly heavier than this. But for what this is and what I'm going to be replacing, this is one heck of an upgrade. And it's a relatively affordable one, especially for those of you who want to put something like this in tied to a fairly robust solar package that can keep it maintained, so you can run something maybe like a dehumidifier for an extended period of time inside of your RV without having to worry. So that's one really good reason why something like this might be a great upgrade for you. So the battery itself has a length of right under 19 inches, and this opening right here is 20 inches. So it's going to fit in here. You can see the existing solar charge controller right here that I will be removing to hook up the new Victron 30 amp solar charge controller, which will definitely be a much, much better system for it. So we're going to get this lead acid deep cycle battery out of here, and we'll go ahead and put the new one in. Now, if you want to know something that's crazy, is that this little battery that we just removed is actually half the weight of this thing right here. Isn't that insane? Okay, so we have the battery installed. I have a piece of 2x4 on the other side of it that's bolted down or screwed through the bottom floor, so this thing's not sliding anywhere, side to side or front to back. And it weighs so dang much, it's not going to hop up and around anything, I really doubt. We have the Victron solar charge controller installed. I disconnected this PWM charge controller down here. That's just a really, really cheapy one. It's completely disconnected. Now I just need to unscrew it and get it out of here. But this one right here is connected. I just need to connect to it through my app so I can make sure everything is working properly. Then we're going to go ahead and get the battery connected. Okay, with solar connected, the panel up there is not pumping a tremendous amount of power into the battery, right under an amp. But it's doing its job. So I turned off the inverter power and I turned off shore power. And I'm using this battery right now to auto level the system just to make sure that everything's working well. So we got the battery installed, got the terminals connected. I can't put the caps back on because they won't fit over the wires. I might have to put like a power block in here. But I actually like the power connections going straight to the battery, which is nice. On this side, I have both ground connections as well as the ground for my TPMS system, which I installed in a previous video. Power for the TPMS is going straight to the battery as well. And then the power for the RV is also tied in. So we are set. This is good to go. It is not moving. It's in a really, really good spot. It fits well. I am a little leery about the weight, right? I'm not saying that this is super heavy for what it is, but it is 104 pounds, and that does add some weight to the front of the RV. So definitely something that I might try to counteract by removing some of the weight. One of the good things is the washer and dryer, which is way up here in the bedroom, really doesn't count towards the weight on this section of the frame, since that weight is directly going to be transferred to pin weight, since it's pretty much directly over the back of the truck. The weight that I'm contending with most is going to be the weight of the generator, the propane, and what's in this front basement storage, which I have thinned out quite a bit. I've removed quite a bit of stuff from there. I also took this panel cover off because it covered up this mess of wires, which is cool to do, I guess, if you want to make it look a little nicer. But for me now, especially because I have this in here, I want to have a better view of what's going on back here. So I just decided to take it off so I can see all the wiring that goes in all different directions from all sorts of different things, including the inverter, which is one of these wires. The other one's house power. And then the ground is kind of the same thing. One of those ground wires here goes to the inverter, and then the other one goes to house ground. And then, yeah, that makes up the two big cables going to here. So I definitely want those going directly to and from the battery, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to change it. Anyways, super, super impressed with the fact that I now have a 460 amp hour Vatrer battery inside of the front basement area. This is a tremendous amount of capacity, and quite frankly, there aren't a heck of a lot of batteries that are this size with this type of capacity and built this way with this incredibly robust steel chassis to protect it, grab handles, and all of that jazz. But yep, I will put a link in the description of this video if this is something you may be interested in adding to your RV or whatever you want to add it to. This would probably work well in all sorts of different applications. Tons and tons and tons of capacity. That's the real win here, and that is super cool that they were able to accomplish that in a relatively small, compact form factor that doesn't weigh a heck of a lot, comparatively speaking. That said, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Again, link in the description if this is something you're interested in. They do all sorts of really, really great sales, so definitely go check it out. Just because you see an MSRP is definitely not going to be what you pay for this most of the time. So yeah, big shout out to the folks over at Vatrer for sending this for review and evaluation. Super cool to have it installed, along with finally putting in that Victron MPPT solar charge controller that I've had sitting in the shop for a while. Just got to remove that one now and maybe repurpose it for something else. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.